This episode of the podcast is brought to you by our friends at Track Farms and their excellent CBD products. I just got my latest Track Farms drop with all the goodies, the tinctures and some of the pre-rolls, and they also sent me some of this new lotion I'm testing out. I'll let you guys know how it goes. I'm kind of liking it so far, especially for jiu-jitsu. I get these really cut-up elbows going and rolling all the time, so I'm going to let you guys know how that one goes. But I've loved everything else that Track Farms has sent me. They just have hands down the best stuff, and it's because it comes from guys you know, good guys making good stuff, good CBD. So go to track-farms.com and use the code STRANGERS at checkout to get 15% off of your order. Again, that is track-farms.com, and use code STRANGERS and get you some CBD. Ricky Reyes, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here, man.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm excited today. We're hanging out in Kansas City. In the cool part of Kansas City is what it feels like, hanging out.
It used to be the uncool trailer lot hookers and drug deals and all kinds of crazy stuff. But yeah, it's West Bottoms, KC.
Yeah, wait, that's not cool, all the things you just listed?
It was awesome. I moved here in 2005, and it was like a ghost town down here still. I mean, nothing but the worst shit of Kansas City.
Right. Isn't that always how cool goes, though? It kind of starts a little shady, and then
textbooks.
Yeah.
That's textbook of like every major city in America. But yeah, dude, I've been down in the West Bottom since 2005.
Yeah.
So I've watched it change, and now there's lofts and restaurants, and there used to be nothing.
Yeah. What's a cool spot? We just got into Kansas City I guess like last week. And for podcast listeners, it's been a hot minute since I've gotten an episode to you because we were working like dogs. We did a shoot after shoot after shoot down in Texas, and I did my best to get episodes out. But finally, we're in a place where I can reach out to cool people and start actually getting some more episodes on the books. So we have more coming your way. So first, I should probably introduce the people to kind of what you do, because it's been a minute since I've done a solid motorcycle episode, which is a topic on this podcast that has not happen all that often. I've been talking to a lot of jiu-jitsu people. I've been talking to a lot of bread people, and a lot of health people. So we finally get to talk motorcycles again today.
Yeah, it's what is it? All-consuming, the worst drug in the planet. It's just motorcycles, and I can go for hours talking about why and how, but it's just so. I think if you're into motorcycles, and I'm like a fan of all motorcycles. I grew up riding dirt bikes, and then I got into old Vespa scooters in high school. I had a bunch of Vespa scooters.
Nice.
And I'm old, so they were old school ones.
Nice.
And then I just started, in the 90s, started buying street bikes, and then I built my first chopper. And I think that's where I moved to Kansas City in 2005. And my daughter was 1 year old, and I was ready to move from LA. I moved from LA to here. And there was no punk rock club, which is actually how the Anchor started. The name Anchor Moto actually came from the Anchor, which is a punk rock club I started.
Oh, okay. All right.
I booked just punk and hardcore bands.
Nice.
And I had a little teeny closet in the back room, and I built my bikes out of this little office closet.
Oh yeah.
And so in 2008, the fire marshal shut us down. Classic all punk rock story.
Why?
Clubs.
For what?
It was totally 100% illegal, man. It was a really terrible, fire hazard doom room that was in the West Bottoms, just 3 blocks from here.
Mm-hmm.
And the fire marshal, we had a crazy show. There was 200 kids in a room that should hold 50.
Yeah.
And it was cool, and it was super punk, and it was we did it for 3 years, and we never got in trouble, and then we finally it happened.
Yeah.
And so I just was building bikes out of this little back room. And I was building bikes for customers now. Friends were hitting me up about building parts. And I was just getting my feet wet in how to run a business also. Mm-hmm. And I worked for the railroad. So I had a day job. Mm-hmm. I ran a punk rock club. I played guitar in 3 bands. And I was building bikes. And so I just made that leap. I just was I'm going to do this for real. And so I took Anchor, the venue, and just added Moto to the end. Because at that point, everyone already knew me as Ricky Anchor.
Okay.
Everyone's phone says Ricky Anchor. I still get calls to book bands. Still, my number's still been the same.
Yeah.
And that's it, man. The rest is kind of history. 2008, I opened my first real shop. And in 2014, I quit my day job, and that's it.
Yeah.
Been doing bikes ever since.
There's a real tight connection with the whole punk rock kind of vibe and with motorcycles, and it goes way back. I mean, this is
Like the beginning of time.
Yeah. It's always, it's not all that curious as to why. I mean, I think, behind a motorcycle is a whole lot of rugged individualism. I mean, that's what motorcycles are all about. And
well, again, we could spool off into a whole world of like what motorcycle companies are selling as a lifestyle, and then there's dudes like me, and there's a whole culture of dudes like me that really are. I'm trying to connect to a time that even I wasn't alive for.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was born in '73. I'm 47 years old. My generation is the last generation that had no phones, no computers. Like, my mom was like, yo, you want to have a car? Like, you got to go get a job and work and buy yourself a car. And then I didn't have money to fix the car, so I had to learn how to work on it. And so my generation's kind of the last generation as like a big picture that was kind of like old school, man. Like, we worked on our own stuff. I wanted a skate ramp. We'd go down and like steal wood off of like signs on the side of the road and build skate ramps out of it.
Yep.
And nowadays that stuff's just not happening.
Yeah, it's not happening at all. And I've talked about that before on the podcast and stuff. And it's interesting how times change like that. I mean, I can remember being a kid, and it was similar stuff. But I think that's because my parents made a pretty conscious effort that was what we were going to do. That my childhood was going to be outside, and we would screw around. And I remember this one time, my buddies and I got this idea out of some book. And we built this giant crossbow out of like some old wood that we found in the attic, and we just like built it on my driveway. And I remember that I found some like old practice arrows, and we were literally launching these across the street. And the game was that a kid would ride by on his bicycle across the street, and you'd try to hit him with the arrows, and that was the game.
And that's like the stuff that's just not happening. So my boy, I have an 11-year-old, and I have a 16-year-old, almost 17-year-old daughter, and I'm trying to raise them that way.
Sure.
I'm like, yo, let's build like dumb weapons, and like we built a dirt bike out of like a Briggs and Stratton motor and like an old go-kart, and like just was like, yo, you can make something out of this. It just takes time and like a welder and But yeah, man, it's like I don't know. As I get older now, like I literally can't tell how old people are anymore. I'm at that age now where I'm like, they could be 16, they could be 30. I don't know. They have to literally tell me. But you can always tell kids that are a little older because they will know like what a screwdriver is, like how to use a screwdriver. Like kids nowadays literally have no idea.
Yeah, it's a strange change. And I mean, even there's a great book that I love. It's called Shop Class as Soulcraft. I don't know if you've heard of this book. It's phenomenal.
Sounds amazing.
He talks about sort of. I'm big into like I love learning about concepts like through all the philosophy behind them, and this entire book is all about learning with your hands and learning through doing and learning through shop class. And he also talks about how shop class is just not happening anymore.
They stopped even like my era of high school. So I graduated in '91. We had shop class, automotive class, small engine repair, silk screen. So like all of us punk rock kids in high school, we like printed our own band T-shirts.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the DIY ethics, which I'm sure you're familiar with. DIY ethics is so tied together with punk rock, which in turn directly related me to like, I'm gonna build myself a motorcycle. Like, dude, I literally had no idea. I bought a Sawzall and I bought $100 welder at like an estate sale, and I cut my motorcycle in half that afternoon and figured it out.
That's cool.
And ever since then, it's just been a learning process.
Yeah. Well, and the more modern the bike gets, the more everything's hidden too, and the more electric components you've got, and it's a different beast. It's got. My bike is I've got a 2010 Honda Shadow RS, and even that. So we got a fuel injector, which means there's a computer in there somewhere doing something. So it's a different ballgame already.
Yeah, everything in the shop. And I've found my little niche in Kansas City, which was like, yo, just do old bikes. Let's build like old style choppers and bobbers and street trackers, and like kind of keep it to like custom bikes.
Yeah,
because that's what I really like, and that's what I do well at. But yeah, no computers. No, I have this like I used to have this giant list of rules by the front counter that was like all the rules, like no 4-car bikes, no this, no that. And now I'm just like, no one even asks anymore. They just know what I'm going to work on.
Well, it's changing too. I mean, I have not yet seen the new Ewan McGregor motorcycle. I forget what the new one is called. Long Way
Up.
Up? Is that what they're doing?
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Is it really?
Yeah, I've watched all of them.
They did it on electric bikes, right?
Yeah, it was a shit show.
Really?
Yeah. Well, they're just not ready yet. Like, I think I'm even fascinated at like what the new generation of bikes are going to be, because everything's changing. And that would take you directly back to why I build what I build, is that like old bikes have soul. Like that word soul, like, dude, it's been fucked with by old hillbillies. It's been wrecked. It's been jumped. It's been left outside for 10 years. Like all that stuff gives humans character, and it will give a motorcycle character.
Yeah.
And all modern bikes are completely void of that.
Yeah.
They're sterile. They're plastic. But they do serve a purpose.
Yeah.
And that gets you to another thing of like, I'm going to ride this bike to Africa. Well, you cannot do that on a 1975 Harley. This is not going to happen. So then modern bikes come into play.
Right.
So them riding their bikes from like the tip of South America to LA on electric bikes was insane. But they also did it with like millions of dollars backing them.
Yeah.
And people putting in power stations for them. And all this shit is totally unrealistic in modern world.
Yeah.
Like, only because they're famous and they have money did they get to pull it off.
They didn't the first time around, that was...
Yeah, they did the long way around or whatever.
Yeah, but I mean, that was like the start of Ewan McGregor's career. Like, I don't think that they had millions of dollars behind them. I think it was a small project, and like that's part of what the movie's about.
I think they did that
is
out
they
of
had...
like straight up love for motorcycles.
Yeah, exactly.
But she was super famous already when they did that.
Oh, yeah. Well,
that
was like around Star Wars coming out, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, they rode BMW, like GSs, which are bulletproof bikes. And
yeah.
That show was amazing.
I wonder if there's like there's going to be a new way, because as technology changes, there will be interest in what the next thing is, and there will be the ability to customize. I mean, you see people who can get just into building a bike as they are into building a computer. Like, they can build that computer from the ground up and know everything about it. And, I think that could come to motorcycles at some point. I could understand that. Someone who really understands electric power and can get really into it, or even get into solar power or whatever it might be. I can see that coming, like that the merge of mechanical and electrical could become something that's really interesting.
That is going to be the next thing, because like the kids nowadays, like my boy can take his computer apart and put it back together, dude.
Right.
I still have never owned a computer. Straight up, I'm like the last person I know that's like never owned a computer. I can use my iPhone at like 3% of its capability.
How do you run a business without a computer?
Dude, I straight up use paper tickets.
Oh.
Like, I straight up handwrite invoices still.
Okay.
I call my suppliers on the phone, like old man style. Like, hey, I need this part. Do you have it? And they're like, did you look it up online? And I'm like, no, I didn't. Look this up for me.
Do you feel like you have some, and I could understand this, do you feel like you have some refusal to accept some new technology because it goes against just like, what you're about?
I'm the most hard-headed person on the planet.
I see.
Like, my wife is just literally like, why are you so old? And why do you not want to accept the future? And I'm like, because I don't have to. Like, Kansas City is still like right on the brink. It's just happening now where things are like modernizing, and they're changing the highways, which I hate because I like the old highways, and they're tearing down the old airport, which I love the old airport. They're putting in a new fancy, new airport to make everything streamlined and more efficient. And it's like, I hate that. I want old stuff. And it directly relates back to why I love old cars and old motorcycles and old music and old music gear. And I collect records because I like old fucking ways to listen to music.
Yeah.
All those things are all directly related to how my brain is like hardwired for being old and like crotchety.
You're a holdout. You're just...
No, I just think I feel like I used to hate it, but now I'm actually like gravitated towards it, of like, I am so glad I was born when I was born.
Yeah.
Because I really do have that little edge to my brain of like, yo, I don't need any of that stuff.
Yeah, I saw you posted something on Instagram that was about like, back before when you could be a kid and not everybody was filming everything that you did all the time. And I think about that a lot. I mean, like Andrea and I are on that gap generation. It's perfect timing. I had a very normal childhood, and by normal I mean not filled with computers. It was just enough that it was exciting and it was fun, and I had a little Windows 95 with shitty computer games. That's fun.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But it wasn't interesting enough that I didn't want to be outside all day. It was like, if it's raining, this is kind of fun. You know what I mean? But it was never the first pick. So I feel like as that gap generation, like social media wasn't really hitting until I guess it was hitting, but we weren't on it. Kids weren't on it.
Yeah.
For sure, kids weren't on it. Before we were out of high school, and so
now it's an all-consuming thing. I mean, people all day, every day are thinking like, oh, what outfit am I gonna wear so I can take this stupid TikTok video about a pig flying or fucking. I literally don't care.
Yeah.
Like, so even on my Instagram, which is we already talked about it, but it's my only way I advertise. It's the only thing I post about, and I try and keep it super fluffy, and I keep my personal politics and my personal views.
Right.
And I try and keep my kids. Once in a great while, I'll post some guitar playing or whatever I'm doing musically, because I want people to like connect with what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Because I really do try and keep it positive, and
Yeah.
I try and just put the art out there,
Yeah.
just the art side, not the like, yo, I grinded on this piece of metal for 9 hours today. No one cares about that. They just want to see the final product.
Yeah.
And that's where it's no different than some like 20-year-old girl like sucking in her belly to take a picture. Like, I'm just giving you the fluff.
Exactly. We try to ride that line because we've got this travel account, and my wife just released a documentary, Newly Nomads. Everybody go watch it. But we try to ride that line where, because she loves photography and videography, she loves creating things. And so because that's the art form she enjoys, that means you're not going to shun that technology. But I'm not going to do that shit that I hate on social media. So if I'm going to post something, it's going to be a legitimate, expression of something. It's going to be something that's real. It's going to be the best version that I can create. And it's just about creating something. And the podcast, even has kind of an old school vibe. Like, I don't worry about the listeners on this podcast. I like you listeners. I don't worry about how many I have. What I've enjoyed so much more about this podcast is that in every city I stop in, I've got a great excuse to go meet somebody really cool. And now I'm on, this is episode maybe 50-ish something. Oh wow. That's like 50 really cool people that I've gotten to meet. And that has become a family of people. And now all over the country, I'm in your town again and I get to see that person. It's the best thing about doing this to me. So I like to keep sort of that approach to it that's not so worried about what the rest of the world thinks about it. It's for me and serves a purpose for me.
Well, it's like, there's probably some scientific word for that. But yeah, it's true. You have to do it out of pure love.
Yeah.
Like, for what you're doing. And like, you reaching out to me was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, I'm sure I could talk about some junk for a while.
Sure.
Like, I've been doing this a long time.
Yeah.
But it's just inherently, it turns into a numbers game. People are always like, well, how many followers you got? How many this? How many that? And then with the motorcycle world, you get all these like, man, like Chopper Popular. Like, they're trying to build bikes so people like their shit, so they can get into a show, so they can sell the bike for more money in a raffle. There's a ton of that. And I just stay out of it too, man. I get invited to shows like all over the country. And if I'm down with the dudes doing it, I'll usually try and make it. Because it's like, they literally invite you, but they're like, yo, you have to drive to California, bring your bike, pay for a hotel room. It's like cool that you're invited, but there's no backing.
Yeah.
You're not, this is very like old school with motorcycles. It's very, it's like peacocking, it's like, I'm going to like raise up my pretty feathers and you can see my bike I built, but I don't get shit out of it.
So your preference is that one-on-one connection. It's like taking someone's bike and turn it into their dream bike. Like, you like that personal connection then.
Yeah. Well, there's two sides of that. There's my bikes, my personal bikes. And if you guys out there check my Instagram, like, you can always tell my bikes versus my customer bikes. I have a style I like, and I don't care how much money I spend, how many, like, 20 hours to build one part, and then I don't like it, I throw it in a bucket and I build it again. That's the art side, and I let my brain just go crazy. Like, laying in bed, not sleeping, dreaming about the part I'm going to make the next day. And then I have my customers, and then it's like, how much money can you spend? I can do this for you with this budget. Or they bring me, sketch doodles on napkins, and I'm like, yeah, I can build you that. And so that's it's a balance. It's always like this. I'm like a professional juggler with other people's money and time.
Yeah.
And I try and treat all my customers with like respect. And everyone works hard for their money, but they want cool motorcycles. And then that turns into motorcycles are not food. Motorcycles are not your sleeping. It's like, it is a hobby, and either you're down to build a dream bike that you're going to keep, and maybe you'll ride it for a year and sell it, that you're going to lose money. It just, their motorcycles.
Mm-hmm.
It's a waste of money and time, but it's wonderful. I mean, it really is. When you see customers come in and they get the bike back that they loved, that they dreamt of 5 years ago, and they're literally like in tears sometimes.
Yeah.
And then they ride off into the sunset, and I'm like, oh, cool, that's great. And then I might not see him again. I might see him in 2 weeks. Like, who knows?
Yeah, I think a lot about like practicality with some of these bikes too. I want to understand what people want that dream bike for, because I see bikes that I think are super cool, and I do like the bobber, the good stripped down, like I'm into that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think a lot about like, okay, when I ride for like 2 hours, I'm sore, like even on my bike, and that's pretty comfy. So there's a side of me that really likes the way those bikes look, and then there's a side of me that's like, I'd like the Gold Wing that I can just be super comfy on for several hours at a time and still be on a motorcycle.
Well, that's like the utilitarian. Like, what are you going to use this bike for?
Right.
There's like, I have, I'm always at 5 or 6 or 7 bikes that I own because I'm always having bikes fall in my lap or whatever. But I have like a city bike that I just ride from home to work and work to home. I have a bike I can ride to California on. I have a bike I'm always working on. I have a bike that my wife can ride. I have a bike my kids can ride. Like, I mean, it's literally, you can make these excuses in your brain to like hoard motorcycles.
Right.
Or you could buy one bike you can do everything on.
Right.
But that's like a magical unicorn. Like, it just doesn't. I mean, you can, on your bike, you could ride it anywhere.
Yeah, my bike, that's why I bought my bike. It was a super affordable way. It's a 750, so it can take Andrea and I up into the mountains. I bought it out in Colorado when we lived there, so it's plenty of horsepower to get up into the mountains. It's totally fine.
Yeah.
And but I also put some saddlebags on the back so I can go and pick up the groceries or do kind of whatever I need to do. The sad thing for me right now is it's really hard. We move around a lot because I got to load it up into the truck, and that is a process. Because I got a very tall truck now. So, I don't. There are weeks at a time. Like, we've been here for a week, and I haven't taken it down yet because I'm just like, you know what? It's just in the back of the truck. Like, I'm gonna have to go find a spot. You know what I mean? Find a spot where you really can get that.
I have a big 12-passenger van that I gutted. That I use for hauling bikes, dude. I'm like barging people's driveways, finding ditches to park in. Dude, like driving around neighborhoods, looking for like low spots. Dude, I load bikes almost daily.
Yeah.
I'm like a pro at it.
Yeah, you got to tell me a spot around here then.
Yeah, dude,
you got to help me find a spot.
There's loading docks everywhere around.
Okay,
you can just back right up to unload them.
Okay, yeah, that's what I need to do because I just delay it.
Motorcycles can be whatever you want them to be. Like, dude, I like riding my chopper down gravel roads like it's a dirt bike. That's my favorite thing. It's like get on gravel road and just ride like a psycho. Like, I'm riding a dirt bike, but I'm on my chopper.
Oh man.
And then like I get back to the city, I'll wash my bike off, then I'm riding it home that afternoon. It's like you can do everything you want on one bike. It's just they're not really made for, like my little Triumph. Like, I'm in love with old Triumphs right now. I've kind of go through these phases of like all Harleys, and then I go all Triumphs, and then I'll buy like a bunch of dirt bikes, and it's kind of cyclatory. But dude, you get obsessed with stuff and just let my brain just kind of go.
Well, I feel like, motorcycles originally, that was the point. It was like you could take this anywhere. And I feel like you probably had better riders at that time too, because those bikes were made to go on the shittiest roads possible and on gravel and on grass and dirt and whatever you wanted to do, and you see these guys with bikes that now we consider like these vintage classics, and people like, they polish them with diapers, as Ferris Bueller would say, but they, no, that's Cameron that says that. Anyway,
just wipes it with a diaper.
But like, these guys, the reason they built that was to go anywhere on anything.
Still like, I'm obsessed with like 60s everything. Like, I love 60s music, like garage style punk rock. I love surf music. I love all the cars, motorcycles. But that's the beginning of like chopper culture, is really the 60s. And those guys had like one roached out piece of shit bike, and they would get on it and ride it 500 miles without even thinking about it. Because it broke, they could fix it on the side of the road.
Yeah.
Or you could go buy another bike for $100 back then. Like, it wasn't a big deal.
Right.
So again, I'm drawn to things that are super simple, and like, I know my bikes, I can wire them to like 3 wires to run the whole bike. Yeah. Which means a lot less stuff can go wrong on the side of the road, or you can fix it easier on the side of the road.
Right.
But yeah, dude, I like daydream about buying like your car. Like, I want a bike that I can get on and just push a button and ride across the country. Everyone wants that.
Right.
But I just can't. My brain doesn't let me have that. It's like, oh no, you need to like chopper it, and you need to like put stupid handlebars on it. You need to make it a comfortable bike, not comfortable, because really that's what's cool.
Yeah.
So that's that, like, cool versus functionality.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the dudes that are hanging out at Blip are very, like, stock motorcycle. They don't want anything custom. Like at Sundays down here, there'll be 300 bikes outside. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
There'll be like 3 old bikes and then
Yeah.
nothing but new Triumphs and BMWs, and
Right.
which are cool too. I mean,
Yeah.
I love all motorcycles.
So this, I should mention for people, Blip, that's the coffee, is it
yeah,
Blip
it's a
Roasters?
coffee
or what
shop.
is it called?
It's a coffee shop, and they do roasting, and they have motorcycle gear, and
it's right here. I mean, you're connected to
Yeah, we're
them.
connected by a building. So
Yeah.
we started talking like 2 years ago about putting our businesses together. And Ian from Blip, super good homie, and he actually secured the loan to buy the building. So we actually have like a forever home.
Nice.
It's been one of the best things in my life personally to have like a friend that's actually like sort of a business partner.
Mm-hmm.
We went into this totally like not ready. I mean, we started moving in the month, like 1 year ago right now was quarantine started.
Mm-hmm.
We got the keys for this building 1 year ago.
Yeah.
And I moved my shop from where it was. He moved his shop from where it was. This building was completely full to the ceiling of garbage and old throwaway stuff. And we did a ton of work.
Yeah.
It was insane.
Well, it's a cool thing. I think you've got some cultural like expectations with motorcycles, because I think a lot of people think of Harleys and biker bars. But if you go back into the history of it a little bit, it's there's a real deep connection with coffee and motorcycles, really. I mean, that's where cafe racers sort of come from, and that's there's a deep connection with that. These
Like
the
60s,
Sunday morning
that's
rides.
right back to like late
Exactly.
50s, early 60s bike culture
Yeah.
in London, which is another reason I'm obsessed with Triumphs right now. Is I've been watching old biker movies from the 50s and 60s, Wild One and all that. All those are British bikes. That style of bike, cafe racer bike, I mean, they were built first like road racing. And
Yeah.
that was really the
You'd,
point of
you'd
those.
get your coffee and you go drag race, all hyped up on caffeine.
Well,
That
they
was
actually
the
road
vibe.
raced them. I mean, they actually had circuits in England. They raced
Really?
them on. Yeah, dude. They were like, they had no kickstands. They were like ready for racing.
That's pretty
And
cool.
then they were like, "Oh, I'm gonna ride and get some lunch." And they only had one bike, so they
Yeah.
would take it and ride it to wherever they were riding to.
Yeah.
And then you could go to like the Mods and Rockers, the Riots, which is really the first case of like youth culture that was based around motorcycling, which turned into bike clubs in America. Is actually all goes right back to the Mods versus Rockers riots in England. Is how bikers started. They started adapting that look, leather jacket, kind of greasy, kind of whatever. The Americans latched onto that.
Yeah.
Turned it into what it turned into,
Yeah.
which is a whole nother culture like I don't give a shit about. Like
What is?
biker culture is like the worst thing ever.
Really?
Yeah,
Why do
man.
you say that?
I have zero. I'll give you.
First of all, help me understand biker culture the way you're defining it. So, what is that to you?
When I think of a
Thinking
biker,
Hells
I'm
Angels,
thinking,
kinda
yeah.
like-
Well, I wouldn't even say like any club names because it doesn't
Well, yeah,
matter.
I'm not asking you to either. I
Yeah,
just
yeah,
wanna
yeah.
set the
I'm not
vibe.
like there's no club out there that isn't based around like some trashy 70s like basically like a facade. Like it's all based around like dressing a certain way. The Harley Davidson company is trying to sell people a lifestyle by like, yo, you got to buy our jacket and
Yeah.
buy our boots. And then you're going to buy this piece of shit motorcycle for way too much money that's going to break. And then you're going to have to pay us to fix it. And then on the opposite spectrum, you have the BMW dudes and the Ducati guys and that are like, well, I own a Ducati and I wear like button-up polos and I play golf. Like, I don't care about that either. So I don't care about any of that selling me of anything. Like the only label I've ever been okay with is being a punk rocker that loves motorcycles. And so I just stick with that. So like I don't like being called a biker because I have a beard and I'm covered in tattoos. And I'm like, yo, bro, I'm like 47 years old. I've been a vegetarian since I was like 16. If you know anything about straight edge, the scene straight edge, like
Yeah, a
music.
little.
So I've been straight edge since I was 13. I've never been drunk. I've never smoked weed.
Wow.
I haven't eaten meat since I was 16. I am a father of 2 kids. I have worked 70 plus hours a week for my entire adult life. Like I'm about as straight as it gets.
How does the meat thing figure in? Because that doesn't seem all that connected to me. Is that more like a personal thing?
That's a straight edge thing. Like being vegan and vegetarian in the straight edge world is just part of it about not wanting like any drugs in your body. And so like, and being health conscious and being like responsible for other living things, dude. I don't want to kill things like at all. I didn't want any part of it when I was a teenager. I'm 47. I still feel like I can go to the grocery store and buy everything I want and not eat meat.
Yeah.
And so I made that choice years and years ago. And I was part of like that movement in the 90s of like supporting that animal rights and animal liberation and all this other. And I just kind of, the things I make rules for myself, like I'm going to stay straight edge. I'm never going to drink. I'm never going to smoke. I made that rule. I stuck to it. I'm not going to eat meat. I stuck to it. I'm going to be like a good dad. Stuck with it. Even though I got divorced and went through a crazy divorce, and I still stayed the best dad. I have my kids 50-50. I've made that commitment.
So you feel like is discipline just kind of a big thing for you? Like that, like you anchor on to that part of yourself?
Yeah, anchor. There you go.
Yeah. See,
no, really.
I'll say it as many times as I can.
It's very like, it's a punk rock thing. It was my brain at like 12 years old being like, yo, I don't fit in anywhere.
Yeah.
I don't fit in with my friends I'm actually hanging out with. I don't fit in with because I'm like an introvert and I'm very like into my own little brain. But then finding punk rock was like, yo, like the first time I heard The Clash, I was like, oh my God, this is my music. And then I heard the Ramones, and then I heard, then you start exploring your own world of music.
Right.
I actually base my whole world is around music and playing in bands. Like I still play in a band. I still play guitar. I've got my kids into playing music. But then you had to like, I got to feed my kids. I got to like pay a mortgage.
Right.
I want to build myself more bikes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it all takes money. So then you get this balance of, it's almost like I could say I was like a lawyer or whatever. Like it's just, this is my job. Like I come to work, I do my job. I try and do the best job I can do because that's a personal thing. Right. Even when I worked at the railroad, I did the best job I could do. I fucking hated that job. Like literally in tears some days getting up, going to work, but I would still go to work and do the best job I could do. Because that's something that you just inherently, I am that person.
Yeah.
I am also like a straight edge kid. I'm also a vegetarian. I'm also like, dude, I'll punch someone in the head. If they say some stupid racist shit, I don't say anything. I just punch them because that's how I was raised in the 90s and the 80s. It's like someone's going to call you, like me and my brother are both half Mexican. And my little brother would get picked on, in the 80s. And it would be like some Nazi Peckerwood dude in California. And it was like, why even talk? It's like, that's not going to happen. Nothing's going to happen if we talk. So it would just be like, okay, I'm just going to run up behind him and like sucker punch him and run. And so that was how we dealt with stuff in the 80s,
Yeah.
Driving around like a Suzuki like Samurai with no top with like little baseball bats, like chasing Nazis around.
Interesting.
And that was... I'm like staunchly anti-racist, anti-sexist, anti-ageist. Like all the things in life that are terrible are all because of those things.
Yeah.
And so, and being in a biker culture, it's totally fine to be a racist and a sexist and property of Dawn on some chick's ass or whatever. Like I have zero interest in that.
It is a strange part of that culture. I agree with you. I think
so weird.
You know who I ended up having actually a whole lot of interest in was Sonny Barger. The quote founder of Hell's Angels. I mean,
I've read both his books.
He's written some phenomenal books. I actually really like his guide to writing, like just in terms of.
I've not read that.
Oh, it's really good. Yeah, it's just concepts on like how to safely ride, and they have really changed. Like I've had some, minor scrapes, little things, and his book taught me exactly what I was doing wrong in those situations. Just made me a better rider. I forget what it's called. Shoot, I have it at home. It's just a guide to motorcycle. I don't know. Guide to motorcycle, maybe?
I've got both of his books that are autobiographies I've read. I'm not a huge reader, but then like the books I love, I'll read like 10 times because they really do like touch me.
Yeah.
Like it's a trip. It's weird.
Yeah.
There's something about reading that if I could be a better writer, I would love to write, but it's just like my brain, the function of actually like writing down paragraphs and have it be linear is like my brain can't do it.
Just do a podcast.
I start just like jumping.
That's what I do because I don't care.
This is the first podcast I've ever done, So I'm like freaking out inside.
It's
funny.
yeah, well, it's fair. It's fairly relaxed. There's very little pressure, honestly.
No, but just me talking is enough to make my brain explode.
It's yeah. So, but his whole thing, it was interesting. Like, he talked about when basically all the Hell's Angels guys started wearing just random old Nazi paraphernalia, and ultimately, I think it sounded like they started to do it because it was giving them attention. Because it gave them negative attention, and any type of attention those guys really liked, and it is a strange thing that it sort of blended into that culture.
It's been said many times that they started wearing that stuff just to like freak out the squares, which is like funny because like in quotes, freaking out the squares, like just riding a motorcycle freaks people out.
Right, exactly.
And punk rockers did it too. There's like the famous picture of Sid Vicious wearing like the swastika shirt, and dude, it's just like, to me, that's just 100% not cool.
Yeah.
Like even nowadays, you'll see some dude with like SS bolts on their like points cover of their bike or whatever, and I'm like, yo, it's instant. Do not like that person. Do not like that bike.
It sounds like you are a really like black and white person. You see that the world in
there's
the
no
lines
gray
you've
area.
drawn.
No gray area, but I try and keep it like all positive. Like my black
Right.
and white is like, I try and keep the positives. Like, yo, this is the golden rule. There might be a little bit of like gray area, but I mean, being anti-racist is pretty much like that's a positive. There's no budging.
Yeah.
So if someone says something stupid in front of you and says something sexist to your wife or says something stupid to your kids, like, it's me. If I didn't say anything or didn't react, then that's actually back on me now. I feel like it's always been like, yo, it's okay to say something. You don't have to punch everybody, but you can, like, this little old lady that's yelling at the black guy at the grocery store, like, it's okay to tell her to shut her mouth because it's not, you're out of place, not me.
See, I've got another perspective on this too, and it's just a totally different lane, which is a big part of this podcast. I'm really into self-defense. It's been a big thing for me, and I had Tim Larkin on the podcast a few episodes ago, and he wrote the book When Violence is the Answer, and he's a phenomenal writer. He's just a phenomenal self-defense expert, and his perspectives on when to be confrontational, when to be violent, have really affected how I lead my life, and I think it comes down to how you balance your values, and everybody's a little bit different. I totally understand where you're coming from, and I also know that it's not the same way that I look at those situations, because I just have a different way of
I'm
approaching
like older
it.
now. I definitely have chilled out. Like, but telling someone, hey, you need to like lower your voice. Hey, it's not okay to yell at the Indian guy and call him like what they call those people. Like, dude, he's just working. He's literally just trying to make money to feed his family, and you are accosting him.
Yeah.
And so
That is
those. I've done it so many times. It's literally, and like in quarantine now and dealing with people not wanting to wear a mask, Trump supporters, whatever, dude. I don't care about politics, but I do know that like wearing a mask and not wearing a mask is just being like polite and not polite.
Yeah, I see that one too. It's
super simple. Dude,
yeah.
Bro, I don't want my family getting sick. I'd hate wearing a mask. I understand. But just wear the mask. It's like, dude, the easiest thing in the world.
Right.
And now, it shouldn't even be a thought. It's just put it on.
Well, it's I think what you're talking about is sort of like the power of the bystander. I mean, it's the thing we were taught as kids when it came to bullying, which is like that you need to speak up when you're seeing something shitty happen. It's also tough because the world has gotten a lot more complicated, and because that
I feel sorry for my kids now because they don't have that balance of like, it's not even okay to like yell at anybody at school, or like back when we were kids. I mean, I don't know how old you are, but like we had a wash behind our high school that was like, yo, meet me at the wash at 3:30, and you would just fight and it would be over, but no one was getting shot and no one was getting stabbed.
That's
and, like,
where it gets
all these things
right?
Nowadays they're
Yeah.
kind of like insane, but
Yeah.
it was a very like easy way to live. Like
Right.
you didn't like someone, you just called them out.
Right.
You'd go fight. It'd be over.
I definitely, and I understand that world a lot better now. I mean, since I started doing jiu-jitsu, I understand that side of things better, because certainly like that existed when I was a kid. There was, I think, I'm sure less so than what you're describing, but it was still around, and now I think it's completely not around. But it's good for me to sort of like engage in the world of violence and be like, oh yeah, that's what it feels like when you've got
physical.
someone wrestling you to the ground. I mean, that's what that feels like.
So my brother owns, or used to own, a jiu-jitsu studio in Seattle.
Okay.
So he taught jiu-jitsu. He's like a triple black belt, whatever.
Sure.
And so he would show me like, this is how you like defend yourself, and this is how you. So there's like another way. I mean, the way you're talking about is like learning how to be self-defensive, like to be safe.
Right.
And then so I want that for my daughter. Like,
Right.
she's 16 years old. You know, how do you keep her safe? And it's just such a crazy world. Man.
Yeah.
It's just like,
I think
it's mind-boggling.
It's interesting because I hear you like advocating for other people to take responsibility of what they're doing and sort of that you want to step in. At the same time, I'm also a big believer in the responsibility of the individual, that like it is up to every person to make sure that they are being the best version of themselves and the least shitty to other people. And
Oh, yeah.
I think that a lot of times we point fingers at anything outside of like, hey man, you on a personal level, like you need to be a better person. Like that, there's no
Well, see, that's
escaping
where
that.
I've already done all my personal work. Like, I would be like the worst drunk in the world. Like, I can barely keep my like bad attitude and my rage in check.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't even imagine having that little like scapegoat of like, yo, I'm gonna get half drunk and just fuck someone up tonight.
Do you feel like
So-
you let that rage out in your music? Like, is that where you get to express some of
dude.
those?
Hardcore in the 90s was like the jam, dude. It was like go to shows, get in the pit, scream along to your favorite bands, start bands, go on tour. I mean, that was really like where I cut my teeth at life.
Mm-hmm.
Was really all in music and really getting involved in like local music. But it also gave you the like release to like go to shows and actually get in a pit and stage dive, and dude, it was so much fun.
Well, I mean that is its own drug in a way, right? Is like that
Oh, yeah.
communing with other people and that just adrenaline rush of what that is like.
Well, finding it's like, so we're going back to motorcycle, finding a community that you want to be involved in. Some people want to play golf, they move into a golf community and play golf every day. Some people want to be in music, they start a band, they book shows, they hang out at shows. Motorcycle people, now in Kansas City, we hang out at Blip.
Yeah,
The motorcycle shop's connected.
yeah,
It's very like making your own home.
right,
You live in a trailer. That's your home. You can live
Yeah.
anywhere, and that to you is comfortable.
right.
Like, I'm most comfortable in my shop, sitting right here. I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
I like being alone. I have my kids at home. I come to work. I do my job. I go
Right.
home. But when I'm here, I'm very like, I call it like my hermit hole. Like, I'm literally alone in this dark, warehouse.
Do you listen
I'm
to
like,
music while you work or
all
anything
day.
like that?
I
Yeah,
listen to music like every second of the day. The first thing I do is put music on
yeah.
in the morning.
It's the one thing. Okay, I love Robert Persig. Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance is a book I'm
Yeah.
sure you're familiar with.
We could talk about that in a minute. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I was just going to bring up one thing from that book. It's the one thing I disagree with this genius dude on, which is he says specifically in the book, never take your bike to a shop where they're listening to music because it means they're not focused. And I totally disagree because I think I hit my best. What is that called when you're really in the moment? You're like really engaged. Like
Engage or in. I just call it in the zone, dude. I just zone out.
oh, it's not alpha, but it sounds like alpha. What's the word I'm fucking looking for? You're in that place. I love when I do this because podcast guests know the word and
Yeah,
they
I
don't get to help me. Fuck you guys. But you're in that state. You're in the zone and you're doing your. I think for me, like one of the hardest things for me is like writing, but I do have to do it quite often in my job. And if I have music on, I can plug right in. I am zoned way in, and I think so. That's the one place I disagree with.
See, me and my wife
Mr.
call it time
Persig.
traveling. Like where I come to work and I'll get focused on something
Mm-hmm.
and I'll look at because I have, I'm looking at my customers to keep track of their hours,
Right.
what I'm charging them for. And I'll like look at my phone. It's like, oh, it's 9:03 and I'll start working. And then I'll look at my phone again and it's like 2:30.
Yeah.
And I'm like, bro, like I missed lunch. I'm like,
That's just a sign you're
5
in
hours
the
went
right
by.
job for you. You're in the place that is
Yeah.
like this.
no, but I have music playing constantly.
yeah,
I mean, like, and some days it's like 90s hardcore. Some days it's 50s. Like, I love Buddy Holly. I love all like
Oh,
the
sure.
50s, like rock and roll girl group. I love the Shangri-Las. All that stuff directly related to how I got into punk rock is very from like the first record I ever bought. I collect records. So at home, I only play records.
Mm-hmm. Is
That's
that what
my-
you do here too?
No,
All vinyl
here is like I have a stupid Bluetooth thing for
Yeah.
my phone. So I'm on Spotify, which is like a life-changing
Yeah.
thing having Spotify.
Yeah. I'm the same way, but I'm that way with podcasts, which makes sense why I love doing them.
Yeah.
Because I'll just take in podcasts all day. I just love it. I'm in the zone, and
I am-
I will forget that it's. What's nice is I can forget it's playing. I can miss half an hour of a conversation because I'm
yeah.
deep in work. It doesn't matter.
And then
Pick it back up. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
I use it for, so I play guitar in a band, and so I use it for like doing homework, for like writing songs. I'm huge into like writing songs. Some days it's like all about tone and feeling. Some days it's just about like how gnarly I can get it. But I use music as like everything. Like I'm in a good mood, I'm in a bad mood. I want to like feel happy. I want to be like punch a wall. Like all those things, I get all that from music. And it's the second I get home from work, it's like work boots come off. I walk straight to my record player and I pick out a record and I put a record on, and then I'll start cooking dinner for the kids. And I'll do my night chores, but it's all while playing music.
What about during here's a hiccup. What about during like a good fight with the spouse? Does there still have to be music going? Does it make it worse?
My wife is actually the worst fighter in the world, and she'll laugh at this because like she will not fight with me. I'll be like, come on, let's go at it. Let's scream, let's yell, let's get it over with, and then like we'll go make up. Like, but yeah, she doesn't. No fighting, dude. Honestly, my wife is the best thing ever. We own a tattoo shop together. She tattoos. I own a bike shop. We're like superhero couple. Like we literally do. We work so well together. Yeah. We support each other. She works as much as I do. We're both workaholics, but when we do have time to sit down and actually like hang out, we talk about music and we play music because she's super into her own music, and she's into motorcycles and she's into tattoos. She's like the raddest ever, but she has to deal with me all the time. Yeah. So I'm kind of like I'm kind of the stick in the mud, honestly. Like she's kind of like, you're so old and so cranky, but she loves me. So
yeah, but there's a good balance in those relationships. You don't want to be both the same. Like I think Andrea is the one that, like, I'm such a homebody. Like I would be happy. I love our life traveling, but don't get me wrong. If you were to be like, you have to go live in Tucson now, and that's where you live, I'd be like, okay, I'm done. That's fine. I travel mostly out of necessity for work, but she is the one who will push me to go do stuff. And when I go and do stuff, I have lots of fun. So that's great.
That's your balance.
But if it was up to me, I wouldn't ever hardly leave the house.
I do both. I get like really over the last year, especially. I usually take a couple bike trips a year. Like I call them caveman trips. I put like 3 pairs of underwear, 3 pairs of socks,
gnarly,
2 t-shirts, and I get on my motorcycle and just go. And I just ride like to California. I've ridden up north. I've ridden south. But last year I didn't take any trips. So this year has been like, if I don't take a trip this year, I'm going to go out of my mind.
Yeah. What are you going for? You go for music, for concerts?
I just go to go.
Yeah.
It's literally like the last maybe like true calling of like, man, it's like, yo, I just want to travel. I want to like feel wind on my face. I want to like drink coffee, eat soft serve ice cream at every single gas stop. And I call them caveman trips because I don't care if I take a shower. I don't shave. I sleep on my friends' floors. I've like slept in ditches on the side of the road.
Really?
It's literally the most freeing thing in the world to go out in the world and just be. I call it just be. Just like stop when you want to stop, eat when you want to eat, ride the stupid motorcycle as far as you want to go, and then when you're done, you turn around and go home. And then it starts on the way home. I start thinking about like, oh shit, I gotta go back to work. I got this bike to work on. My kids need braces put on. All the normal life stuff starts kind of like filtering back in. But you have a fresh take on all of it. It's like, oh, I just had a good trip. I'm super tired. My hands hurt. My back hurts. My ass hurts. I'm sitting on the seat. Like all those things are all like the positives after.
Are you a helmet guy?
Yes. Yeah, I'm a huge helmet guy.
Me too. Me too.
I have learned over
kids.
the years. I got kids. I wear boots, full like
ATG,
long sleeves, no jackets. Man, I don't wear any like goofy like jacket. I'll wear like if I'm going across the country, I'll wear like a canvas like mechanic's jacket or something.
Interesting. That's the one thing where I've always seen the opposite of most people, because like you're gonna be like, okay, I'll wear a helmet but no jacket. Yeah. For me, if you made me pick, I would choose a jacket every time because I'm way more worried about sliding on the ground.
I've seen friends grind their face up like open face like helmet style, and that's why I started wearing a full face helmet. Yeah. So I'll wear a full face and then I'll wear like a t-shirt and pants because I'm like, yo, like. I got shitty tattoos all over my arms anyways. Like, if they got grinded off, I'm okay with that. There's like those funny jokes. Somewhere. But, dude, I've been super lucky, man. I've been riding bikes my whole life. I've only had a couple, like, minor injuries. I've ridden across the country countless times now. And it's like, all the accidents I've had are all my fault. And that's always, 90% of the times it's the rider's fault. Yeah. And then you get like someone pulling out in front of you, or maybe not 90%, but you get what I'm saying. Like all my ones
Oh,
are
yeah.
like stupid, like getting gas at the gas station and the kickstand didn't come out, and I dropped the bike over and broke
Yeah.
my ankle. Like I've done it.
Ouch.
You know,
Yeah.
it happens.
That happened to me once, and I really like had to put my whole weight into keeping that bike up, and I really like wrenched my back pretty good just to
Oh yeah,
keep
just
it.
destroy you. I had a foot pick that go
heavy.
through my ankle bone just
Ooh.
from falling over.
Yeah.
And then I had like, I don't know. We don't need to go into all the wrecks. I've had a ton, but mostly like I was trying to wheelie a bike and fell off. And I
yeah.
tried to jump something. I
That
shouldn't
would
have
be your
jumped,
fault,
and-
yeah.
Yeah, those were all my fault. And I ride around the city. I mean, I live in the city. I ride in the city a whole bunch.
Sure.
There's times that you can ride like a total asshole,
Yeah.
and there's times you shouldn't. So
Yeah.
I've learned that in all the years. So like, when I get out into the country, that's where I get to like do 100 miles an hour, have some fun. In the city, I keep it pretty chill.
Yeah.
You know? And it really is a learning thing. Like when you ride more, and guys that have ridden only a year or two, they're not going to know to not do this and not do that, and how to jump a curb through someone's front bush to not get hit. And,
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because you look at the statistics on accidents, and you always want to think it's the crotch rocket dudes in flip flops, but it turns out that that's not most often who gets hurt. It's usually like the middle-aged retired guys who this is their first motorcycle ever, and they just decide I don't wear helmets because this is their release from their corporate job.
And that goes into like the Harley, like they're just like, I'm too tough for that.
Right.
No one's gonna tell me to not wear a helmet. I'm like, yo, then don't wear a helmet.
Yeah.
When your head bounces off the ground, trust me, you are not gonna be stoked.
Not a good time. Not a good
But
time.
I will say, and I've said it, and this might help someone out there that maybe hasn't ridden a motorcycle, but the best people, women, boys, children, old men, if you grew up riding a dirt bike,
Yeah.
and you get a street bike, you are going to be a better rider because you're going to learn how to do like defensive moves, like not even thinking about slamming on the brakes, doing a skid stop, ejecting, literally throwing yourself off a motorcycle at speed. You're going to learn all that on a dirt bike. So like everyone I know, all my friends that we ride together, all of us that grew up riding dirt bikes, we're all pretty good street riders.
Yeah.
And we know how to like gauge how the other person's riding. Like you don't have to point at the stupid rock on the ground. I already saw it, but I know if you kind of scoot over 2 feet, there's something there. And you learn all that just by riding with other people. But yeah, if you grew up riding dirt bikes, or even let's say you're 20 years old and want to get into riding, you should get a dirt bike first. Learn how to ride a dirt
Making
bike,
mistakes on that.
then move to the street, and you're
Yeah.
gonna have a better like learning curve.
Yeah, it's not an advantage I had. My dad grew up riding dirt bikes, but I did not. But I was always on a bicycle, so I have some semblance of I'm comfortable on 2 wheels. You know, there's
Yeah.
something there. But my wife Andrea really, she's talked about how she will want to ride one day, and I'm like, that's fine, but I think we should get a dirt bike first. I think
Yeah.
we both should work more on the dirt bike.
You're gonna learn the fundamentals from anything. I mean, bicycles, mopeds, scooters, just the feeling of moving and
Yeah.
stopping. But like the gut reaction, like someone pulls out in front of you. I'm sure you've had it happen, and you just have to literally split decision. There's actually no thought. It's either hit the gas on and actually pass someone, or it's shut everything down and lock up both wheels and maybe low side and kick the bike off. And I've had to do all those.
Yeah.
I've like literally wheelied up a curb, through someone's bush, through a front yard to avoid getting hit, like T-boned. And like that was a split decision. You're just hanging on for dear life,
Right.
and hopefully you just stay on the bike. And
Right.
but yeah, just motorcycles are dangerous.
It comes with-
there's no like, let's not like fluff this. Like motorcycles are dangerous.
That's part of what makes them so great. You know, it just is what it is because you're embracing the real world around you, and you're taking responsibility.
being
in your
in the
hands.
world, man. Like being thrust into the world, like literally thrust. Like there's nothing. The wind's hitting you, bugs are hitting you. You know, as you get older and ride, like I've lost quite a few friends now on motorcycles in accidents, and you just kind of like, no one wants to talk about it, no one wants to think about it, but like, dude, they died, and every one of them would say the same thing if they were alive still. Like, yo, I died doing something I loved. And if say my time comes, everyone's gonna know the same thing. I always had this like, I don't think about it much, but like when I die, I want these bikes I build to be like out there. I want to be like in 20 years, like, oh, that bike was built by Anchor Moto. Like it's my hands touched it. I welded it.
It's your legacy.
It's like a legacy. Yeah, exactly, man. Like I'm probably never gonna write a book. I'm probably never gonna like write a like Philharmonic piece, or you know what I mean? Like, but motorcycles are kind of my thing, I guess. Like,
Sure.
I didn't know it was gonna be, but
Yeah.
I want like my hard work, and when my kids are older, I want like someday. I was thinking about like I should do like just a bike show of like just the bikes I've built over like 20 years, and really take it in. Like, dude, I've done a ton of work,
Right.
and that's like blood, sweat, tears. I'm gonna be like decrepit, probably crippled, like hobbling around because I can't. My kicking leg, my right knee is completely wasted. They want to replace it, but I can't afford it. Two, once you start going down that rabbit hole of like surgeries to fix things,
one after another.
it just goes worse.
Yeah.
So I'm just like deal with knee pain all the time. But it's
You're
just
too
part of it,
straight edge
man.
to even
Like,
get hooked on opioids.
yeah. What's the for someone like me? I just see it as like it's all positive. It's
Yeah.
all like, dude, I've worn this body out.
Yeah.
Like I've been skateboarding my whole life. I still skateboard.
Yeah.
Um,
This is a big thing that I was actually talking with the guy at jiu-jitsu the other day, because we've all always got one injury or another when we walk into that class. We're all hurt.
So
Yeah.
gnarly on your body.
But what I thought was cool is I mentioned to this dude, I was like, well, you know what? The truth is, either you can live a cushy life and not use your body at all and not risk it and not get these little injuries. But in the end, that catches up to you too. Like the person who lives real cushy and doesn't put their body through anything, that all catches up to you. It's going to catch up to you in heart attacks because you're not in shape. It's going to catch up to you in whatever,
Getting soft is just getting soft.
Yeah.
Who's gonna? I mean, we just talked about Tucson earlier. So my mom retired to Tucson, and like the entire city that she lives in is all retirees, and you can always tell the older people that are like have stayed in shape, that are active, that are like healthy in the mind and healthy in the body, and then you have the other ones that are like in wheelchairs, decrepit, obese, and I'm like, yo, like that was an eye-opening experience of like, I'm only 20 years away from like where she's at. Like I need to like maybe take care of my body more, maybe lose the 20 pounds or something I need to lose and keep it off. And
you embrace some pain now of working out, and you embrace the potential of some injuries now because of whatever way you work out, even weightlifting or whatever it is. You're gonna get injuries. Runners get injuries. There's no exercise that's free from injury, and you embrace that like acute pain now so that your body can handle things better later. I think
pushing your body is a huge thing of life.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, people that don't want to push themselves and don't want to do anything outside of their comfort zone, I mean, they live a pretty sheltered. Like, I'm not hiking that mountain because that's hard work. Well, then you'll never see the view on the other side of that mountain.
absolutely.
I don't want to sit on this motorcycle for 10 hours, but like, I want to be 3 states away in 10 hours. I want to be away from here. And that's another way to think about it. It's like, use this thing as a way to like launch into something else. But the idea of dying with like a pretty body, like, dude, I'm real gruesome at this point. So that's definitely not happening.
Yeah.
But it's like you seem like you've like read books and you like think you're a thinker. Like
Love
I
books.
think too much. I am super into thinking about things outside of the normal, like the way you think about things. So I look at motorcycles as like it's my art, but it's also just a really stupid toy. So there's always the balance. I think about guitar as the same way. I can make art with it, but really I'm just going to beat the shit out of it and make the worst noise I can make with it. And someone's going to think that's pretty, or someone's going to think that's dumb.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you just do it because you have to.
You like those juxtapositions about life.
Well, it's like, what's that famous line about painters? Like, don't ever trust a painter that says they can't help themselves. Like, I want to be obsessed with things. I'm obsessed with things that like I can never master. That's another thing that really like drew me to playing guitar, learning how to use a lathe and a mill, learning how to wire a motorcycle, learning how to build a motor. These are all things you can never master. You will never know everything.
Right.
So like the quest for knowledge is there, but it's like, how are you going to act out on it? So what I do is come here every day and I learn something new every single day, a better way to do something that I've done maybe 100 times. And I'm like, ooh, maybe if I put some like WD-40 on that, the finish will come out nicer, or tapping that hole will be easier, or, you know what I mean? There's a ton of ways to think about it that maybe I don't even think about all the time, but it's just part of my brain process,
Tell me, you want to talk about Robert Pirsig. Tell me a little about that.
So that book is the only book I have ever started I did not finish.
Really?
I actually burned it in my backyard as like a eulogy because it gave me a migraine. I will not even go how far. I tried to read it 3 different times. Everyone I know that finished it loves it. I cannot get past the ultra wordy math. The sections with this boy where he's talking about like taking his boy and his boy's got some mental problems and I identify with all that because like, man, I was a weird kid. My dad rode motorcycles. So you want to identify with this character, but then by like halfway through the book, and I've literally skipped over like 100 pages because he's just talking about quantum physics and like the smell of the air, but then this math problem like got him fucked up. Like I literally had to go burn the book in my backyard. I literally burnt it in like a wood pile because I was
horrible.
like, I'm not doing this. I can't do it anymore. I'm not gonna read it. So that's my that was my take on it.
Interesting.
Pretty funny. I'm ridiculous, but I'm totally serious. I tried to read it so many times, and I do absolutely love anything to do with motorcycles and reading. Like I'll read anything to do with motorcycles.
Yeah. He's he's an acquired taste. He's good for people like me who are meta thinkers. So I don't ever think about anything on the plane in which it actually exists. I'm always going to jump a level up and be more interested in it up there. And that's what he does ultimately.
So
and
I would be exact opposite. I want one below.
I understand that.
I want let's dumb this down.
That would be
like
why you'd hate
gut.
Robert Pirsig.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So there you go. That
100%.
totally makes sense.
He wrote a second book called Lila, which is about sailing, and it is if you if you burned that one book, I think you'd stab this one. It is even farther down to that rabbit hole, but it's basically his story of getting schizophrenia because he's too smart. Because he is too smart and he can't stop seeing these patterns in the world and gave himself schizophrenia. Then basically they fried his brain. They gave him, electric shock therapy, and he basically pretended to no longer have schizophrenia and said, "All right, I will live within this culture that you guys are defining." And it's really beautiful how he approaches
depressing.
it. It's rough. It's rough. He had a horrible life. His so here's a book you might like, which is called Zen and Now, which is a modern day author. Well, not modern day. I think it was written in the 90s. An author goes on that journey of Robert Pirsig's story, and he meets the people that Robert Pirsig met, and he unwinds the story of this guy's life. And what you come to find out are some things about his past, his own relationships, his relationship with his wife, the fact that this dude's kid got stabbed to death at 21. Chris from the book got stabbed in San Francisco when he was 21.
Oh, damn.
And that's pretty rough. And sort of his own background, like his mother, I think his mother was basically forced into marriage with her own father. So that was like his family that he came from, as in like his grandmother died and then his father married his mother, kind of really, really fucked up stuff.
Yeah.
And you wonder how like a seriously genius dude can come out of that, because by all accounts, even if you don't like him, he could run circles around our brains.
I tried to even read the book just by like post-it noting the sections about motorcycles and his kid. Like I tried to like separate the book. And I'm like, why didn't someone do this yet? Like for me.
Do you like Zen philosophy?
I am interested in it, but it's so over my head that like it almost goes into like religion. If you want to talk about religion, I just let it go over my head. I have zero interest in religion. I've like explored it. I think on a spiritual level, you could even talk about Zen in that. I'm interested in Buddhism because it sounds like Buddhism and straight edge to me almost is kind of like I think a lot. I try and be a good person. I self-process all my inner fucking craziness. I process it all. I'm depressed. What am I depressed about? Oh, it's because of this, this, and this. And then I fix that and I fix myself. I've done that my whole life. I just don't use pills or bottles, or I just do it. And so you could go into like a spirituality of all that stuff, but it really all breaks down to the very simple of like, what does it mean to you? What do you need in your life that explains things? Like Jesus on the cross does not fucking explain anything to anybody. The Bible was written by men. Men are inherently bad. So I mean, you start like, you could break it all down and like you could go on for years and years about all this. And that stuff I was interested in my 90s. I went to a Buddhist temple. I went to a Hare Krishna temple. I went to a Christian, like I was raised Jehovah Witness. Like you go in a whole
Okay.
nother. I was raised basically in a cult.
Yeah.
They're psychotic.
Yeah.
So my family was literally ripped apart by that. I had friends that were Mormon, so I was like, "What the hell's Mormonism all about?" So I've tried to like learn. I
Yeah.
don't want to be like judging anybody
No, I
for
know.
anything, but you. So I searched it out.
Yeah.
So Zen and finding Zen, like if you want to talk about like movie weirdness, like yes, of course, everyone wants to be happy and like elevate themselves and be like conscious of the world.
Right.
Unfortunately, the modern world, all that shit has been stamped out. They just want you to watch like Justin Bieber videos on YouTube, and they want you to like buy the stupid shit from Amazon.
Yeah.
So I've made this effort, bro. I don't buy anything from Amazon. I don't go to fucking Walmart. I literally would rather pay $5 more from my local person that is my friend than to pay some other rich ass white dude.
Yeah.
So you have to make that effort, and you have to make that like decision, and that's
Right.
that black and white thing again.
Yeah, well, I think again, to not harp on this too much, but it's up to every individual to decide like what value set they're going to live by. So like, I'm a blend of stoicism and Zen and minimalism, and also wrapping that all in the idea that I could, and very likely am living in a simulation, which means none of it matters anyways. So I'm very open to the idea that none of it matters
Let's
at
talk
all.
about the Matrix.
Man, I love simulation theory. It is creepy.
My daughter is obsessed with one, Keanu Reeves. Two,
Mm.
that whole dude, it's a thing. I mean, it's to me, it almost makes more sense, and it kind of goes back to like if you ever watched Star Trek, like the Star Trek stuff where it was like humanoids, like half human, half computer, half. There's like this whole crazy world, and I've read books about that. And
Well,
it's super interesting.
I like engaging with all of it and then circling it back to like, I think, I don't want to misrepresent any philosophical standpoint here, but I think that a lot of like Stoicism and Zen is really like, you're never gonna know, and that's like it's the
same
laughing
thing as-
Buddha, is like you're not gonna know any of this shit. Don't worry about
But
it.
it's also, you could take that straight to Catholicism, Christianity. Nobody knows, man.
Right.
This is all just like life. Like they talk about faith. They talk about. I know faith in the fact that I'm gonna work 70 hours this week, and I'm gonna buy food for my kids and pay my mortgage. Like I can do that. I believe in that. My kids are gonna grow up happy. So you can take like spirituality and make it like an everyday thing by just like, I like to buy homeless people coffee. Literally, I'll buy like 5 coffees and drive around the city and give coffee away. Coffee makes me happy. And when you like hand coffee to a homeless person that literally has not had like hot coffee in like weeks or even years, they've like literally cried for the simplest thing that I do every day. I drink like 5 cups of coffee. I take it for granted. It's the simplest, dumbest things that will give people like to believe in humanity. Like that to me is the easiest thing.
There's some things that are real, and we know they're real. You can't tell me love is made up. You can't tell me that pleasure and pain are made up. But those are real because I can experience them. But and you can't tell me that being charitable isn't real, that kindness isn't real, or empathy isn't real.
I don't know if it's like it's better for me or better for the person or better for. I mean, Kansas City's got some amazing like people in it that help homeless people all the time, and a women's shelter that only caters to abused women and young mothers. And dude, Kansas City is actually amazing for all that. It's one of the most racially diverse. Like it's not 50-50, but there's a huge African American community, huge Asian community, Indians. I'm Mexican. There's a huge. I moved to the Mexican side of town because I wanted to be around more Mexicans, because that's what feels normal to me. Because I'm from LA, and I was around nothing but Mexicans growing up.
Sure.
And I want to walk to the corner store and buy tortillas every day that are fresh. And so you make those judgments and you make those like decisions for yourself of like, I want to be around who I want to be around.
Right. And you want to live in the town you want to live in too. I mean.
Yeah, Kansas City wouldn't have been like my favorite, most awesome place to live, but since I'm here, I'll never leave Kansas City.
I get really interested in the idea that people are like, upset when there aren't jobs or opportunity in the place that they happen to live. I think that's really almost a first in history, because if you look back, the whole thing was you go to where the opportunity is, you go to where the job is, even if that means traveling across the country in a gold rush. Like, you go to where there's opportunity. It's why ghost towns exist. But now I feel like you've got ghost towns that are populated with a ton of people. Like the one example that comes up a lot is obviously like West Virginia, where you've lost a lot of mining jobs, and people just live there, and they just sit there.
Well, I think they can find a way to exist money-wise, like whatever that ends up being. But like think about so I went to Europe on my honeymoon, and the first time I experienced like Europe,
Where to?
I went to Spain, I went to England.
Oh, cool.
Stopped in Edinburgh, but going to Spain and like they literally walk to the store, they buy their food they're gonna eat for that day.
Mm-hmm.
And they walk in and get lunch, and they walk down to the beach, and they walk. I'm like, yo, this is amazing. Like, it's a totally different way to live.
Right.
It's daily living. It's
Yeah.
not week. I'm not thinking 2 weeks ahead. They're like, oh, today I'm gonna eat some bread, and I'm gonna eat some olives. And
Living for the day. I like it.
it was amazing. It was, and it was one of the only places I've ever been where it was like 100% no one gave a shit what you were doing. You was like, dudes making out on the corner. Women like half naked on the beach, like black dudes walking with white girls holding hands, like something that like in America is it's crazy that people even think about it or judge people for that. But in Spain, it was like, this is totally normal. Women riding motorcycles everywhere. Like this is the littlest things. And those are the things that made the biggest impression. It was like, yo, I can like be whoever I'm going to be. Mm-hmm. And be totally fine.
Yeah.
And I try and do that here already, but you're surrounded by people that aren't that way.
Well, it does. I mean, it gets upsetting to. I think I want to be able to resist. A lot of the things that are sort of becoming expected of people, because I don't want it to be okay that I'm going to spend the entire day on a computer and then my entertainment's going to I saw this great tweet a while back that was like, oh, it's the weekend, time to reward myself for looking at the medium screen all week by going home to look at the big screen and playing games on my small screen. And it's like, we're a little sheepy when we just are put into the world of, okay, you're gonna have a 9-to-5 job where you will be on a computer all day, and now it's becoming acceptable to do that from home, but you're still gonna be on the computer all day, and you're not gonna cook anything for yourself. I'm a big proponent of cooking. I cook everything. Yeah. You're not going to cook anything for yourself. It's all going to be prepared for you. They can bring it straight to your door, and this sort of the segmentation of activity. Like, this is where your entertainment comes from. This is where this comes from. You're not responsible for anything other than your sit down in that chair and stare at that screen and then stare at this screen. And
that's the Borg thing like Star Trek was the Borgs or whatever, cyborgs. But that's like, you're talking about the exact thing that I hate and that I've literally made my entire life not to be.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to eat the food you make because I'm vegetarian and it's a pain in the ass to eat out. I cook all my meals at home.
Yeah, nice. Do you do sourdough? Because I talk about sourdough a lot on this podcast.
Actually, I've never baked bread in my whole life.
Oh, man, it's the best.
I would agree sourdough is my favorite thing in the whole world.
It's the best.
Yeah.
It's the best. I could run the listeners of the show ragged talking more about the health benefits
I could eat
of sourdough.
Mexican food and I could eat Indian food every single day forever.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it literally... And I eat ice cream every single night. That's the other, it's maybe my one for real, it's 10 o'clock. I'm ready. Okay, I'm going to have my ice cream. If I'm out of ice cream, it's like the end of the world.
Yeah.
Super ridiculous. But it is one of my things, one of my vices, you'd say.
Well, you don't drink, so you got to have something in there.
Yeah.
I
play guitar every night. That's one of my, quiet time. The kids are kind of, maybe getting ready for bed, or my wife's, drawing for tattoos the next day. Mm-hmm. I'll, sneak downstairs, and I have my little guitar studio, and I play guitar and I make myself happy. And I'm
That's
like,
cool.
Okay, cool. All right. And then I go back upstairs and kind of back to normal. But I think everyone needs that little break. I don't watch TV. I don't have a computer. I might watch a movie with my wife once a week. We'll watch some trashy 80s or 90s movie. But just trying to really stay out of it, man. Being consumed by your phone and I get it, man. My kids are on their computer they're at homeschooled all year, so they're on their computer all day. Yeah. But now they actually are as soon as they're done, they shut their stuff and we go outside and play, or we go for a walk, or we go for a bike ride, or
It takes practice. I think within the last year, I rid myself of a legitimate like addiction to streaming a show. I always and I wasn't always watching, but I did always have some Netflix show going on my phone all the time, all day long while I would work, and I realized it was keeping me from actually going and doing stuff. Like, because when you're working on the computer, but you're working slower, and then you're like, I'm gonna finish this episode, maybe get a snack. You don't necessarily go out and do that thing you're trying to do, and then it's too late now to go do that fun thing. So I've cut it off completely cold turkey now.
I'll binge watch a show
podcast
every
now.
once in a while, something that's good out, like Stranger Things. I watch with the kids, and like we binge watched Game of Thrones, like however many seasons they were. I watched them all in like
How could
2
you
months.
not? How could you not?
It was good. Like once in a while, it's okay to like binge watch. and
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly.
Like, but for the most part, I'm too busy. Like I'm just like, what would I rather do? Play guitar or sit on the couch? Like
Right.
I'd rather play guitar.
Well, you can't, it's that thing. Like, I understand, like, your instinct is to be maybe a little angrier about some of the stuff than like I am, but you can't be angry all the time. You have to
I'm not
embrace the world
angry.
you live
I'm
in.
kind of say I'm not angry anymore at
Yeah.
all. I really am like chilled out, and dude, I have like an amazing wife, amazing kids. I got an amazing group of friends. I got to think with the motorcycle shop, I have to like be standoffish with most people
Interesting.
because I meet people, like say I meet you,
Yeah.
you have a motorcycle, we hang out 2 or 3 times. Well, then your bike needs work done on it. So then you're going to call me and you're going to bring it to me. And then I'm going to be like, well, it's still like $75 an hour or whatever I'm charging you. Then there's always that like, well, I mean, but we're homies. Like we hung out, we skateboarded together, or we played guitar once together.
Yeah.
So I've had to like basically not make any new friends.
You do have to do that.
I have my
yeah.
acquaintances here. I have lots of people that come through the coffee shop that come in here and hang out. But when it's business, it's business.
Yeah.
Man, like I got kids to feed. I have a car payment. It's normal stuff for everybody. People tend to think that because I'm in the shop all day and I'm covered in metal shavings and grease and that it's not a real job or something. But like it is a real job.
Yeah.
And I take it super serious.
Yeah.
I want to produce like top shelf work, man. I
Yeah.
don't want any mediocre stuff. So even nowadays, I've got to get like super snobby.
Yeah.
Like, well, I mean, I only do stuff at a certain level now. No more subpar stuff.
Yeah.
And that's all based around money, like what they can afford, customers. So I'd rather like, I just don't need their money sometimes. Like it's okay to not get all the work. It's like there's plenty of other people that work on motorcycles.
Yeah.
So that's something you learn in the big scheme of life is like sometimes it's okay to say no to work. You know what I mean?
Help me with the motorcycle issue. I would love to just keep my bike in a nice closed garage all the time, and I try to take good care of it, and it's almost always plugged into a float charger because it gets cold out at nights where we stay. But man, I'm fighting the rust battle like crazy on every single bolt, on just every single thing.
The problem is, so bikes that sit outside in the weather, it's the number one worst thing you can do for your motorcycle because a multitude of reasons. The number one reason is water gets everywhere.
Yeah.
Even condensating water will collect on wiring in your cables.
Tell me about it.
It'll separate in your gas, so condensation will actually form in the gas tank.
Oh, that's fun.
And separate with the gas and cause a water layer.
That's different.
Which will still rust out. Foam in your seat will start rotting and molding.
I would love to keep a cover on it for the record, and I used to, but then the problem is we'll stay in windy places, and it would just blow over. It would just blow over every time. I can't keep a cover on it.
One product I use is called T9, and that is the name of it. It's
Okay.
a rust preventative. And if you steel wold all your nuts and bolts, kind of get the chunky rust off of them, and then coat it with T9. And then you just wipe it with a rag when it's done. It actually penetrates into the metal and actually will keep it from rusting for like up to a year.
Done.
And you can do your aluminum covers, your wheels, everything. You can spray this stuff on everything, and you just wipe it clean.
What about the brake disc? Because that'll get a little rusty too. And I know I've had issues putting stuff on that before because it just.
Yeah, you don't want to use any coating on your. You'd want to take the wheels off.
I learned that one the hard way.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Take the wheels off. If you got like a Brillo pad or Scotch-Brite or anything, and just do it by hand, no coating, and just get the rest off.
Can I put the T9 on that too?
No.
Yeah.
You don't want to coat anything with your brakes.
Yeah. Last time I did that, I got to change my brake pads, which was a learning experience. But.
Just buy stainless rotors.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, most bikes, and I don't know your bike exactly, but most aftermarket stuff they'll have stainless rotors.
Okay.
No rust.
I'll do that maybe next time I get my tires up.
And they wear a little bit different than stock, like mild steel. But I mean, all the Harley stuff around here, like we just all stainless everything.
Yeah.
Midwest is pretty gnarly for weather, so.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in Central Illinois, so I'm pretty familiar
you know.
with
It might even be worse there.
Yeah, it's a fun time. Well, I wish I had all the knowledge that you've got from doing it, but you know what? I'm not granted that because I haven't put in the hours to do it, and you have.
That right there would be a whole nother episode of like what people are. My wife calls it chopper hotline.
Yeah.
Every night about 7 o'clock, I start getting like texts, phone calls. Everybody that's working on their stuff at home, they're calling about like, this wiring is, I don't know what to do here.
Dude,
how do you get this bolt set up on this? Or how do you put bars on this bike? Or
you should do it. You should start a podcast. I tell every
start a
cool
straight up
guest I
chopper
got.
hotline, like old style, like sex phone work, like $4.95 for the first minute.
Well, you could do
$1 every extra minute.
Put a paywall on it and take all these voicemails of people asking you questions. Just be like, just leave me a voicemail, and then you combine those voicemails with your answers, and you're done.
So there you go. You fixed it. I can
next
retire
business.
now. Just
Absolutely.
chopper hotline for everything.
Dude, I mean, it depends on how much you like doing that, but I like, stuff like that I like doing, so it's worth it for me.
I don't mind helping my friends out because it's always, motorcycles, again, I'll never know everything, but I've had a bunch of like really cool old guys, 60s plus, that were like original chopper guys, and they have more knowledge in like their pinky nail than I'll ever have.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So I've learned from them, and I soak it up like a sponge, and I like stay quiet, and I just listen, and I take it in. And when I get back to my house, bro, I like write everything down in notebooks of what they said.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like how I learn. I'm old. I like to read books and manuals. Like I have
Except
a manual
for every
except for that book. I don't learn anything from that either. I have every manual from every book I've ever owned. And when I buy a new bike that I've never owned, I buy the manual and I read it like a full-on book. And then you retain just a little bit.
Yeah.
And then the next time you get in there, you're like, oh, yeah, it said something about that. And then you find it. But I do it as like a learning process, man. Like I love getting bikes I've never had and learning like how everything works. And dude, my mom would bring me home like radios and be like, yo, I found this radio on the side of the curb. Like if you can get it working, cool. And I'd take it apart and figure out what's wrong with it. It started at like 3 or 4 years old.
Okay, well, I know you hated Zen, but Shop Class of Soulcraft, that's your book, man. You're going to like that one a lot.
I'll check it out. My favorite book I've read lately is by Jack Reap. It was called Conversations with a Motorcycle.
Oh, yeah, I saw you posted about that. I'll check it out.
I guess it's super hard to find. Someone bought that book for me years ago. I've read it. This is the third time I read it. It is it's nothing spectacular, but how he writes and how he feels about motorcycles, I definitely identified with.
That's cool.
And it's about him growing up in the 70s, which I'm just a little bit too old. You know what I mean? I was born in 73. So his coming of age is all based around him buying his first motorcycle, like falling in love, having sex, like meeting biker friends that were crazy. Like to me, that's all like nostalgia and history that I'm like, oh man, I wish I could experience that, because by the time I was that old, it was already the 90s and it was garbage,
I'll have to check that out. You'd hate this, but most of my books go on the Kindle because that figures into my minimalism lifestyle. Like my library is this many books. It's probably like 10 books, and it's just the ones I couldn't part with when we.
No, I'm all for like whatever you got to do to read. I love reading. I want books. I want to hold them and look at them, and it's the same thing with the records. Like
I do too. I mean, I love reading out of physical books, but at the same time, like I gotta admit, the ability to just like switch books right there. You're like, I'm not in the mood for that one, and you just boom.
Oh,
boom.
but I would never finish anything then. Like to have the actual book and I see the numbers counting, I'm like, oh, see, my daughter can do that. I can't do it.
I can't. Otherwise, I can't do it. I'm a big
I have to
audiobook
make
guy
myself
too.
like, you are gonna sit and read 20 pages every single day, and I'll get through a book. But if I don't do that, I'll get halfway through it. I'm like, well, whatever, and I'll just throw it to the side.
Or in a fire.
Yeah, I just read I'll read anything to do with like punk rock history, any kind of autobiography of any of punk rock people I love, anything motorcycles, anything history about cars or motorcycles, like those things interest me. So I'm drawn to them.
Mm-hmm.
So then someone talks about, oh, you should read this book. And it's like a love story from World War II. And I'm like,
Sure.
nope, no interest.
Yeah,
Like,
but people, I mean, regardless of what type of book you're reading, people definitely downplay how much reading changes how your brain functions. Like, I can feel it different. When I'm reading consistently, word recall is right there, knowledge is right there that I don't have when I'm not reading.
well,
It's,
it's in your vocabulary. Like I read words that I'm not used to saying, but I know exactly what they mean. I'm like, oh man, that's a really good word for that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's cool. Like,
yeah.
so
And there's so much that you just take away in your own life from all these great books. Like I feel defined in many ways by all the books that I've read and the ones that have stood out and stuck with me.
Well, I mean, I went to school for, I wanted to be a film composer. I wanted to write score music.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to school, I went to college for that and learned how to read music, and learned how to play piano. I learned a whole nother language is reading music. Up to that point, I had never read music. I just played guitar and watched my friends' fingers and like, okay, da-na-na-na-na-na, you know, play the notes.
Yeah.
So actually learning how to read and write music was absolutely life-changing, and that's the same thing as reading books.
Yeah, I could see that.
It has absolutely changed how I think about music. It's how I changed how I heard music. Because now I'm like, oh, that's an E7 minor. Like that. You can like really pick it apart like a math problem.
Mm-hmm.
But reading and having someone write something that you can identify with, like, dude, so Jack Kerouac's On the Road. It's my favorite book ever.
Really?
It is
Okay.
the book that I read, and I read it at the right year in the right mindset when I was like 21 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking lost soul, living in LA. I worked at like a piece of shit video store, making like $4 an hour. I read On the Road, and it changed my life because it was someone writing something that I was feeling
Yeah.
that I had never felt before.
Yeah.
And so he leaves on a road trip. I needed to leave on a road trip. He falls in love like multiple times in that book. But how he wrote about like falling in love, I wanted to experience that. So like that book I've read like 10 or 12 times. Who knows how many times I've read it now. Because whenever I feel lost or fucked up or like wanderlust, that's the book I read.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the book that I identify with. And I like the way you wrote, because you wrote like in a limerick, like it's
all
got
stream of
rhythm.
consciousness. It's all
Some of it's like really wordy, and
Poetic.
some of it's like a little deeper than maybe my brain wants to go. But I take it in and you read it and kind of like get through it. But I love the situations where he's like working at the camp and then he's like moved to San Francisco and all these things were all inspired me to like, I need to move somewhere new.
yeah.
'Cause I grew up in LA. I lived in LA. You know, I did that for years and years and years. And then I end up here, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's probably my favorite book.
Yeah. Well, I just truly think that when people engage with different books, and I don't feel that it's the same with TV shows. There may be some that I could say like this TV show defines some aspect of my personality, but it's far less than the great books that I've read. It's not the same at all.
I couldn't name a single one.
I could.
Not
There
TV.
are TV shows that
What TV show?
impacted me.
I mean, like something deeper than like that girl was cute, or I can identify with that. I can only think of like, I can't think of.
This is really hard to come up with on the spot as I think about it. I know for a fact this is true. You know, shows that taught me about the type of person I wanted to be, or movies as a kid. You know, I think it happened, but I don't know if I can answer it on the spot because I'd want to give a legitimate answer, and I don't think one's gonna just fly off the top of my head.
I mean, we're different generations, like TV show wise, but like maybe the only one I can think of right now is Freaks and Geeks, that came out like in '99 or 2000.
Yeah, that was the first time it was cool to be weird.
What was the
TV
first
show
time
like
on
that.
like a national like sitcom,
Yeah.
and they canceled it after one season.
Yeah.
But it was kids like trying to find themselves that were like outcasts and weirdos, and like so I identified with, of course, all the weirdos. And like, oh, that guy's gonna be a punk rocker, which is what happened. And
Yeah.
you know what I mean? But there's very few. I can't even, dude. Honestly, that might.
Well,
be
and that's the thing,
closest.
and that's still the point I'm trying to make is I think there are less. I think there are some, but it's far less. It's far less. There's something about the commitment to reading a book that is
Oh yeah,
a
books
different
are
experience.
like, man, I just read the story of like LA punk rock. There's like 2 books now John Doe's put out, and it's all the people that were there, and they all wrote a chapter. So all these people from different bands, newspaper writers, like Tim Robbins, the famous actor, like how the acting guild that was happening at the time was all tied into punk rock even.
Yeah.
And so reading like about a time that I can't relive, I don't have a time machine, or I would go back there instantly. But so those kind of stories of like real life, real time, this is the nitty gritty. Like I want to hear about the truth.
Yeah.
Like what was happening.
Right.
Because I'm just too young. You know what I mean? I was like 10 years old when all that was happening. So it was like I wasn't.
Right. You're not
aware
quite
yet.
in the movement.
Yeah, a couple
You're
more
just
years. And so I started like going to see bands play. But that stuff was all like folklore to our generation. By like 86, you know, all those original punk rock guys were all dead or heroin or dead, you know, or they had gotten clean.
Right.
And all those bands had gone away. So then
Right.
our generation started like another generation.
There's something that makes it more special when it's nostalgia too. I mean, I think I tend to think you may be someone who's drawn to the nostalgic aspect of some things. And
well, it's the same thing as old motorcycle. Why I'm drawn
Yeah.
to old,
Yeah.
shitty, smelling, greasy motorcycles is like, yo, this thing it had a life before I touched it.
And you know, the things that we do now that are visceral and real will be someone else's nostalgia one day, and that'll be interesting to see what that's like.
Can you even imagine what like
I
a
can't.
20-year-old what's nostalgic to
I
them?
can't, but you know, we're almost there, right? Because you've got people, so again, like people who love computers and collect these old computers that were barely functioning. I mean, that means something deep to them. It means the start of like the world and becoming connected and becoming this thing that it is. I can understand how that could become nostalgic.
I can see that too. Like, so my wife's like 9 years younger than me, so she grew up like she had a pager, and then she got a phone, and then she had like an old Apple fucking Cube computer, like that she still had when I met her.
Yeah,
it was like, why do you still have this? And she was like, oh, it was my first real computer.
Right.
Like, I mean, that was a real thing.
Oh,
and I'm
yeah.
like, yo, this is going to the dumpster right now. Like, I don't care. But if you tried to take one of my records and throw it away, I would fucking kill somebody. So I get it, man. I totally understand. But it's like, I'm drawn to things that, I mean, I like simple things. Sure. I think I'm like a simple person. I mean, maybe not inside my brain is a total shit show. But in like the very simple way to just, I like simple things. I like simple motorcycles. I don't like anything flashy. Like I wear like the same brown Dickies, a hoodie every single day forever. Like as long as I can remember, it's literally been Dickies and a t-shirt, a band t-shirt. I don't care about fashion. I don't care about what's hip at the moment. I've just tried to stay like numb to all of it. I know it's existing. I want to say, like I said it before, like I let the world fucking revolve around me. Like I don't want to get involved in it. I let what's happening happen, and I just stay like the nucleus of my little world.
That is Zen, by the way. I mean, that is what it is.
Well, it's like I call it king shit. Like I'm king shit of my world. Like in this building, I'm king shit.
Sure.
In your room, you're king shit.
Yeah.
To my 11-year-old son, he's king shit of his room. And you have to respect that.
Yeah.
Like, and it's a huge thing to,
it's
like,
a right.
Well, this other builder in Kansas City, he's king shit of his shop.
Yeah.
And I have to respect that.
Mm-hmm.
And so you really, it's a learning curve to be like, yo, maybe in my world, I'm like king shit, but like in this dude's shop, I ain't nothing.
Yeah.
And in this guy's art studio, I'm nothing.
Yeah.
And to this like writer, I'm nothing. So you accept it, and it keeps you very level-headed if you just accept that, like, yo, like, in other people's worlds, I'm nothing to them.
Yeah.
I could die tomorrow and be nothing.
Yeah.
And so I exist in my little world on my level, and it's like, it's a good place to be. It really is. It's like, I don't think I have an ego. I don't think I try and, like, piss people off blatantly, but I do say stuff straight that most people might not say. But I try and, like, you know, I call it holding hands. I'm like holding hands with my customers. Like, no, you don't want to do that to your bike. You want to like, you want to do this to your bike. And so you really are like leading them kind of like down this path of like the proper way to build a bike. Yeah. There's no shortcuts. Like with a motorcycle, it's like one way the first time or nothing.
Yeah.
Because there's no like room for error. There's like, I can't set your brakes up wrong because you might die.
Right.
You don't want to use a 50-year-old piece of shit motor and not rebuild it because it's just going to fail on you. And then you might die. Like you have all those like talks with my customers. And it's like, I call it holding hands. Like I'm not holding this dude's hand right now. Like, and like with customers, you got like a 3, 4, 5, 6 month relationship with their money, with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a huge commitment, you know.
I think that's a good place probably to leave people with, which is be the king of your place. There is such a thing as the right way to do things and the wrong way to do things, and we're all just figuring it out. But the nice thing is, in your place, you get to decide. You get to decide what that is.
Yeah, they should end with be king shit of your own world.
Being king shit of your own world.
And then respect other people's worlds.
I like it. So thank you very much, Ricky, for joining me on the show. Thanks everybody for listening. Go check out the Newly Nomads documentary. Andrew dropped that on YouTube. I will not talk about that enough because it is phenomenal. And thanks again to Track Farms, our sponsor. And as always, we will see you on the next episode.